Hey, everybody, coming up this episode, how a mega dealer celebrates controllers, acknowledging one of the most important and often underappreciated roles in all automotive, a challenge that keeps automotive controllers awake at night and reduces profitability, increasing theft at the same time, and how one state created a national solution to the problem. Joining me today is Kimberly Scogin, controller, Hudson Auto Group, and Shane Bigelow, CEO, Champ Titles. Today's episode is brought to you by Champ Titles. Thanks for supporting the show. So, Kimberly, you're only the second ever controller to be on the Car Dealership Guy Industry Spotlight. We're super excited to have you here. Controller, what made you decide, hey, I want to become a controller for an auto group, such as Hudson Auto Group?
I started in the car business when I was in high school, went to college to be a teacher. And at that point, realized there wasn't money in teaching, unfortunately. And I loved what I was doing in the car business and switched over to a business major. And I've been doing it ever since. Worked for a small family-owned dealership, and Hudson called me out of the blue. And I made that switch back in 2017. I've loved it ever since.
What is it about automotive, Kimberly, that is so addicting? So our head of training and development at the Ziegler Auto Group, his name is Mike Van Ryn. He was an elementary school principal, and he was approached by Mr. Ziegler very much in the same way, Kimberly, you were maybe by the Hudsons, and said, hey, come join us, help us teach, train, develop, grow, recruit, hire. And he's like, I don't know, the elementary principal to auto. And he never looked back. Like, what is it about automotive that's so addicting, Kimberly?
You either enjoy it or you don't. So I do think once you get in there, you're usually in for life. It's something different every single day. I don't come in and have 2 days that are identical to each other. So I think it's just constantly new things. We're always evolving and learning stuff. And it's just a challenge every day.
And you know what? The controller role that you have is such, at times, an underappreciated role, yet such a key pivotal role. You keep everything going. Is there something, what's one thing you'd love the automotive world, car salespeople, GMs, dealers, what's one thing you'd love for most people to know about automotive or a controller, being a controller at an auto group?
Well, first of all, I've got to give kudos to Hudson Automotive Group and our general managers at my locations. Absolutely support the accounting office. They support anything that we come to them and if we have issues and stuff. So they're really great with supporting us on that. As far as being a controller, it's just something that it's fun that you have your own team that you're dealing with, but then you're also dealing with each of the individual dealership teams. You've got the service department, the parts department, and you just learn so much all the time. So,
Kimberly, I don't want you to tell any of our controllers this because this will get us into trouble. But you even mentioned that at the Hudson Auto Group, like they take the controllers to Disney World. You went to Disney World last year, and you might be going to Mexico. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we do a annual summit, and it's not every year that we get to do something fun. However, this last year, our annual summit for the controllers was in Disney, and we were able to bring our families. So my husband and my kids went with us, and then this year we're actually going to Mexico in November. So we're looking forward to that too.
We're in Mexico. Anywhere special?
We're going to, I think it's Cancun, or it's right outside Cancun.
Yeah, beautiful place regardless. And you know what? There couldn't be a role in an auto group that deserves more praise and recognition, a trip like that, than, again, controllers. So, Kimberly, tell us, as we kind of set up to have the conversation that we're going to have today, what's something that keeps you awake at night? So you are over 3 Nissan stores. You do all the controller activities over Nissan. And then you're also over an element of the Hudson Auto Group called Car Vending. You sell a couple hundred cars a month, but you're also responsible for buying 800 cars a month for the rest of the auto group. What keeps a controller up at night when you have 2 Nissan stores and a large used operation like that?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things is titling is such a challenge, whether it's getting the titles from the auction or once you have a title, all the different reassignments. When you sell a vehicle to another dealer, as we do with car vending, it's those dealers losing a title and then them coming back. I mean, sometimes we have people come back 2 years later and say, we've lost this title. Can you get us a duplicate? So I would say that is probably one of our biggest challenges, the volume of these cars we do.
Why is that so hard? In a world with like all the technology that we have AI, not to mention the fact we put a man on the moon in the 1960s. Why can't we just title stuff easily? Like, it's crazy to me that it's such a difficult thing. And we see it in the news, right? Auto groups have been closed because of difficulty related to titling. Kimberly, from your perspective, why is it so hard?
I think because it's all paper, it's a paper trail, and you get one piece of paper missing in that paper trail, and you've got a nightmare on your hands.
Yeah, and it's paper in a digital world. So that brings us to Shane Bigelow, CEO of Champ Titles. Why is titling so hard in 2025 for so many?
Well, thanks, Sam, for having us. And Kimberly, it's awesome to see you again and love to hear all the great things that Hudson's doing and Carvendi as well. So congratulations on all the success. And please don't tell the people at Champ that you all take those trips because like Sam, I don't
I
even
want to go.
that
Yeah.
exists elsewhere. Sam, I think the thing that is difficult to comprehend about titling is that we all live our daily lives in a very digital world. We consume software now in a very different way than we consumed software 20 years ago, right? It used to be that you'd buy it on a CD, you'd load it into a computer. It was a whole sort of to do. It was a bit of a hassle. Now you just go on your phone and download something and the world sort of works. Well, then all of a sudden you go to buy a car or you're at a dealership and you're responsible for buying a car. And you have to regress into a world that's literally 30 years ago of being in paper. And then there's 50 states and 51 jurisdictions, and then a lot of other smaller jurisdictions that exist. And you wind up having all of these different rules across the country that you need to understand and synthesize your processes for. And that's really difficult to do. And that's why titling can be such a headache. And there needs to be a more national solution available.
I mean, we've seen large auto groups, and we won't name them all, hit the news at various times where they've actually been prohibited from doing business in specific states for that very reason. What prevents all the states from getting together and agreeing on a single format and making it digital and not paper? Like, I think we learned during COVID, it was crazy to me. During COVID, you saw departments of transportation and areas of government that would be responsible for titling that were actually not doing it because nobody was in, and it caused a tremendous backload. If you could digitize it, wouldn't it make Kimberly's job easier, my job, your job? It'd make everybody's job easier if it was uniform and digitized, right?
Yeah, certainly. And I think, if we step back a minute, one of the things that makes our country great is that every state has its own identity, its own way of doing business, its own type of people.
States' rights.
States' rights, right? The 10th Amendment.
Yeah.
And so, that gives dealers an advantage in their states, particularly when you're crossing a border, how they might compete with another state. So I think states are always going to want to maintain some level of control over the way that they allow and permit people to be on their roads, right? Not every road is an interstate road. So the federal government doesn't get to tell you what to do on a local road. That's the state's obligation.
Yeah.
But you do need to have a way to be able to operate in 50 states, right? Just like Carvendi, they're buying cars from all over the country. They're ultimately selling cars all over the country. And you do need a way to have a simple process that I like to say is consistent, disciplined, and repeatable. And thankfully, some states are raising their hand and saying, as a state, our technology is so good around titling, we can now offer what we're doing to the rest of the country. And that's particularly true with what West Virginia has done with a system that we built in West Virginia and is now available to dealers all around the country.
That's awesome. So tell us about this system. What does it do? How does it work? How does it help Kimberly sleep at night and ultimately enjoy a trip somewhere that Hudson sends us on? Which I want in on that trip, by the way. But anyway, how does it work?
I think if we keep mentioning it, maybe we'll get the invite, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Although we'll be like carrying the bags for all of
We
it.
will, which is right, by the way. Again, that's absolutely appropriate.
Absolutely fine. I think the real the analogy to think about when you think about what states are doing is what Delaware did many years ago. Delaware realized that the country was suffering from having really difficult incorporation practices across states. So what did they do? The state changed their laws, changed their rules, got their executive team to support it and staff it and fund it, and said, we're going to offer a service to the whole country to make incorporating in our state really easy. And you've seen other states try to compete with that. Texas is doing really well now and grabbing corporations to come to their state. Well, titling is no different. Right? Titling was a disjointed process in 50 states, very paper intensive, as we spoke about earlier. But one state raised their hand, really with the support of their governor, passed legislation and said, okay, we're going to give this industry that is the lifeblood of our economy. Autos, in many different ways, are the lifeblood of our entire economy in the United States. So goes the auto industry, so goes our country. And we're going to give them a process they can rely on across all 50 states. And we're going to do it not by taking business from any other state. We're going to do it by saying, dealers, this is your opportunity to really codify and build a rigorous process that your controllers will be proud of, so that every time you buy a car, you put that car into your name so that you know that when you sell it, you're not going to have any issues. And unfortunately, many dealers still have the process of, I buy a car, I take the title, I throw it in a filing cabinet, and I hope that when I go to sell it, everything's fine. And that's what leads to a lot of those problems that you spoke of that other dealer groups were having. But the best performing dealer groups like Hudson, like what Carbendi's doing, are saying, you know what, when Kimberly's team buys one of those 800 cars every month, they put that title into their name so they know that when they go to sell it, that car is theirs, it's free and clear of any issues, and their consumer is going to have the best possible customer experience in purchasing a car from Hudson and Carbendi.
And that's what you call the clearinghouse, right? So that was set up in that state, and it's available to everybody all across the country. The title instantly goes into the dealer name, so it'd be into Ziegler if we bought it, Hudson if you bought it. You know, it strikes me, we've had Busy Car on here before, and they do recalls, and they'll actually come onto dealer lots and they'll perform the recall on the dealer lot if they know that vehicle's there and if they know that it needs that recall work, because the vehicle is technically showing on databases as being owned by the auto group, right? So it's easier to find. That's probably another benefit of this, yeah?
The compliance side of this is what you're getting at. And that's a huge benefit, right? Just the way that they're helping dealers be compliant with recall issues. This allows dealers to be compliant with all titling issues to ensure that the asset is theirs. Their lenders are happier that they know they have that title properly in their name. And ultimately, they know for a fact certain that that car is theirs. There's no lack of compliance that exists within the dealer process when they're using the clearinghouse. And to give you the full name, it's called the National Digital Titling Clearinghouse. And in fact, the governor in West Virginia, they passed a law that codifies this, which is really a key to think about the big difference between trying to find a commercial solution if you're a dealer versus saying, there is something I can rely on that I know is backed by law and backed by a state and is available in all 50 states.
Wow, that's interesting. So Kimberly, coming back to you and just kind of the impact of this, right? You were in a world where you were having to chase titles and you're having to get duplicates and figure out where it was titled at any given time. This solution, how much time has it saved you? And then are you able to quantify that back to dollars saved?
I don't really know that we can quantify it back to dollars saved as much as time saved for sure.
Time's money.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, not only me, but my title clerks are tremendous in pointing out this title, let's flip it into our name, or we're going to sell this car to John Doe dealership. They come back to us all the time requesting duplicate titles. Let's go ahead and put this title in our name. So when they do come back to us, it's just a matter of 2 days to get the title. Because you really go from, I no longer have to send my runner down to the DMV. They no longer have to wait an hour or two to flip a title into our name. And that's if the DMV actually has time to take our work. If not, we're leaving it there. We're going back. We just picked up some stuff today that was, we sent on the 8th. And here it's the 22nd, and they just did the title work for us. So now with the clearinghouse, it was already on a system we were familiar with. We run it through DDI, Premier EVR. So it's a system that we already knew how to use. We can upload that title today. If I do it by 2 o'clock, I can send them a FedEx and I have that title in my hand tomorrow.
I mean, I would imagine that's a decent savings compared with having to run around chasing things and recreating things and getting new signatures or powers of attorney and other things retroactively. What did it look like bringing it into the group from a process standpoint? Is it a computer program that's attached onto your DMS? What does the process of the clearinghouse look like?
Yeah, I think the process was very simple for us because we already used DDI as our processor for in-state South Carolina title work. So it's identical to the system we already used. It's just now we click a drop down that says National Clearinghouse. We go there and everything is very similar to what we were already using.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah,
Shane?
yeah, Sam. Thinking about the monetary savings, one thing that we hear quite a bit is that first of all, at a very basic level, FedExing and mailing costs and handling costs drop to a de minimis amount of dollars. Right? You're no longer, everything you're doing is digital. You're not having the couriers run down there. Only that FedEx coming back to you, as Kimberly mentioned, is the only cost you're incurring. Right? So then, of course, the statutory fee for titling. But the real savings is that we talk to dealers all around the country, and depending on the underlying brands, they might experience anywhere from 20 to 70 or so dollars per day in depreciation when they have a car sitting on their lot that they can't sell. And that occurs because they don't know if they rightfully own it, or they've tried to sell it and they've realized they don't rightfully own it, and now that car is dead inventory. And
Well,
so
Shane, it's depreciation, but it's also in today's high interest rate. It's also the flooring expense, right?
exactly, yeah, that number I gave you is certainly an all-inclusive number.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Because it's definitely depreciation, it's definitely the interest expense, the flooring cost, it's the handling, the material, the mailing. And so when you look at that and you say to yourself, wait a minute, if I have even a few days of waiting on this car, I'm losing hundreds of dollars, if not potentially more, if it goes, Kimberly just referenced something that went from the 8th to the 22nd, talking about 14 days of that expense, and you can eliminate that with a small fee to a state that'll process it for you. That's a big savings. And I don't think, to Kimberly's point, I don't think any controller or we could tell a dealer exactly what they'll save. But what we can do is give them an indication as to what it might be. And there's even a calculator on our website so they can play around and try to figure that out for themselves based on what's important to that dealer.
You talk about this being a political solution born of expediency and need. Do you see this being more widely adopted, less as a product, but just as a procedural process that just kind of everybody does? Like, why wouldn't this just be in the background of every DMS or V2 or every titling system, CVR or whatever process?
Yeah, I do certainly see the volumes ticking up each and every day. We certainly see more and more vendors to dealers connecting into the clearinghouse and getting the opportunity to transfer titles for that dealer, either because they're connected to their DMS, because they are the DMS provider, or they're a service provider to the DMS provider. I also see it in places that you may not expect, right? What if you're buying a car and you have an inspection station and you can do it right there by clicking a button after your car gets valued? Right. There are innovative things that are going on in the dealer community around the way that cars get acquired. Buying centers are doing a lot of this. What if the buying center is figuring out the best way for them to acquire the cars they want in their inventory? And as soon as they know they've purchased that car, even if it's states away and not yet loaded on a truck, they're getting that car and title into their name so they can market it immediately on their website. One of the most innovative things I've seen are when dealers are saying, I'm not even going to take shipment of the car. I'm going to leave it where it was, store it there, get the title in my name, market it on my website, and then I'll drop ship the car to whoever buys it off my website. I mean, that's amazing when you think about what Hudson's huge, right? But what could a one rooftop store do to magnify their impact on the industry by having a setup like that? So you see these innovations, it's being led by entities like Carvendi, who are really at the bleeding edge of how do you effectively acquire cars for your dealer group? And then how do you make sure that you can sell the cars online or through your dealers? This is a key piece of that process.
So, Kimberly, from your perspective, how has the clearinghouse technology helped the Hudson Auto Group stand out from your competitors?
Well, I think it's made us more efficient in giving and being able to provide titles to our end user, whether that is an auction, another dealership, or even being able to complete the title work for one of our customers. We're able to do it immediately without hesitation because those titles are already in our.
Oh my gosh, that was a great answer. Holy cow. You talked about some of the other kind of innovations that are being prompted by this product. What are you working on next at Champ? Like, is there a similar, you found a solution to a needed problem in the industry. Automotive is awesome because we find that and we run towards it, not away from it. Are there any other problems that you're searching to find a solution for as you seek to innovate even beyond this?
Well, thanks for asking. The thing that's always top of mind for us is how do we get the end game to be an actual digital title, right? How can it be something that the consumer experiences on their phone? Right now, the end game is still paper, and we've done
That's
digital
crazy.
titles, right?
Yeah.
We've actually created a way through West Virginia to be able to enable the consumer on the other end or a state on the other end to receive a digital title so that the consumer can get the title in their name. But how does every state get to a digital title? Again, we consume technology all day long in a digital form. And then somehow, if you enter into the auto world or the DMV world, you regress into this paper world. How do we
Yeah.
eliminate that? And I think the key is states need building blocks, right? They need electronic liens. They need an electronic titling process. Once they have electronic lien, electronic titling, electronic registration, those three building blocks in place, they can have digital titles. And so as a company, we build those building blocks for states so that they can get to digital titles. And I think within the decade, we're going to see digital titles in more states than not. And that's going to be really exciting for the consumers. It's going to be really exciting for the dealers who don't even have to worry about trafficking in paper anymore in any which way.
Isn't it crazy, though, that again in 2025, it would be a 10-year horizon for digitizing something that is so simple? Like, is it a bureaucracy, Shane? You talk about the building blocks and states need the technology for that building block to build on it. So I get that. But is it bureaucracy and just it's always the way we've done it that it just blows my mind? I'll hear stories about how one of the office members needs to go down to the DMV and hand them this packet, and then she's going to sit there and watch, or he'll sit there and watch while they process it and do whatever they do and produce this paper document. When in today's world, we talk about digital transactions and online retailing, and truly you can't do that until all states have a digital title, right? Because there's going to be a paper element at some point that's required.
Yeah, and more states are willing to communicate with each other digitally because of the technology we've put in place. And there are about 30 million Americans that are now covered by our systems in their states. And
That's
those
awesome.
those places, yeah, it's great. And
Yeah.
those places can communicate. But I think, to your question about is it a bureaucracy related issue, I fully believe that most people that get a job in government or in the DMVs, they get there because they want to help. They love the industry or they want to be supportive of the industry.
Kimberly, he's trying to make friends at the DMV. Local DMV. Go ahead. I want to hear how this wraps up, but yes, go ahead.
But here's what happens. You wind up with vendors that have been in the space for 20, 30 years and we're just about 6.5, 7 years old. And the vendors that are in there, they're accustomed to charging their states literally $100 million or more for a system that should cost a fraction of that, if anything. And many of our states, we charge nothing because dealers, like what you're exhibiting here with having Kimberly on, dealers are willing to consume a fee in order to have a compliant, rigorous, consistent process. And states are all too often saying, well, we don't have the budget to replace our system. So how could we possibly build you something that's up to the quality and standards of what you want? And we're saying nobody consumes like that. The days of Blockbuster video are over for a reason because Netflix is this. You can just turn on movies when you want them on or off. You don't need to get in your car and drive to Blockbuster. And the same is happening in DMV technology. So I don't think it's as much bureaucracy as the vendors that were there were demanding these massive costs that DMV simply couldn't afford. And now they were waiting for this alternative, and we and a few others are providing it.
So it's interesting. You say it's Blockbuster. It's more like scrolls, right? So many of these entities are still working off paper and quill pen instead of.
Yeah, I mean, you think about how far we are away from wax stamps indicating, which king owns a piece of land. Titles have barely progressed past that.
Right.
And I think we're now finally at that point where the whole slope of that change is really speeding up because it's like West Virginia, like Illinois, are now changing their processes and saying to the world, we don't need to do this in paper anymore. There's an electronic way to satisfy what the dealers need, what the lenders need, what the fleet community needs, so that everybody in our ecosystem is operating in a digital way.
So it's interesting as you talk about that. Fraud is a huge problem in our industry. Theft is an enormous problem. We've battled it at our auto group. Kimberly, I'm sure you've seen the same at yours. I would imagine this helps prevent fraud as it preserves that chain of custody more easily and more consistently.
Yeah, very much so. I think there's often a scariness to technology. People are worried about it because they don't think to understand it. Yet again, they do everything on their phone. If
Yeah.
you're comfortable with doing things on your phone, you should absolutely prefer titling and registration and liens to be digital, because the paper process, you could steal the paper, you could steal the ink, you could print something off, you could erase it, you could change it, you could try to title wash it, which quite literally sometimes means washing the title. And
Yeah.
so if you go to a digital realm, all of that is tracked. We see everything that happens to every transaction. And it's really, really difficult for the criminal factor to find its way into the digital realm in this world, because you're talking about state systems that we build. You're talking about the rigors and compliance of lenders and insurance carriers and dealers. It's a difficult world to crack into. Nothing's impossible, but paper is absolutely easier to conduct
Yeah.
fraudulent activity on than digital.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no end to the different ways that they can perpetrate that fraud. So before I ask you a question, which is what can dealers do to kind of help support this, bringing digital titles uniformly across the country? And it sounds like what you're doing is a good building block for that. What does the fee structure look like? What does the costs associated with this look like?
Yeah. So the great thing about this not being a commercial service is that it's a state service. The state publicizes their fees and what they charge for it. There's no incremental champ fee. Again, the champ's just the builder of the technology that the state is deploying. And the state charges their statutory fee, which allows you to have an electronic connection, do everything paperlessly without any incremental fees or associated expenses attached to it, all for their statutory fee. And their statutory fee is around $40 for dealers. And so when you compare that to that, all-in expense of even one day of depreciation and interest expense and shipping and mailing and handling,
Yeah.
you pick up even a couple of days, you're in the black on this transaction. And so it's a highly accretive to the bottom line type of move, even though you look at it and say, wait a minute, why am I paying this? Well, I'm paying this because I have the rigor, compliance, and discipline that a top-notch dealership should have.
Yeah. So when you talk about is that $40 per time it transitions? So once into the dealer name and then once into the customer name, or does that handle the full channel all the way through?
Well, this gets it into the dealer name because the dealer's acquiring the car using the clearinghouse. But once they decide to sell it to the consumer could be anywhere in the country. And then wherever that consumer needs to drive the car, that ultimately is up to the consumer to decide how they're going to register it, what they need to do with it, if they're going to drive it at all, that sort of thing. So that's state specific on the disposition side, or the selling of the car. This is about the acquisition. But what it does do is it cleans it up for auction. So let's say a dealer buys a car, puts it in inventory, titles it in their name, and then says, I just can't sell it. I've got to send it back to auction, or I've got to send it to a different auction. That auction is now delighted because they've got a car in your name as a dealer, and they know there's not going to be any issue selling this. This isn't going to be a problem to push this thing through auction, as opposed to a problem that Kimberly identified at the outset. What if there's 5 signatures on the back and they're crisscrossed out and no one can really track what's happening? And, we talked to the auction companies about this. It's a huge problem for them when they get in data like that, as opposed to something very clean. And it increases your sale price when you provide a clean packet to an auction.
So when you think about dealers and you think about you having this conversation with most dealer groups, I mean, I having the conversation with a controller like Kimberly, that's easy, right? Because Kimberly gets it. She sees the challenge of it. What's the biggest misconception most dealer owner operators have about the titling process when you have a conversation?
I think the biggest thing for dealers is that everybody's trying to figure out, okay, what's the solution out there? Is there some sort of commercial service that I should deploy that's, better than this, or different, or might be better for my outfit? I think you look at the big dealer groups and you're saying, they figured it out. There's a state that has a law that codifies this process that allows you to connect via an API or use a vendor like Kimberly's using DDI, a vendor to connect for you. There's nothing simpler than that. You never have to question, are the rates going to change? Is the system going to go up or down? Is it going to be compliant? It's regulated. There's a law. This is so good for compliance and rigor and discipline. And I think that's the biggest misconception, is that dealers will look and say, well, what else is out there? Well, you don't even think twice. If you're creating an LLC, you're going to put it in Delaware. You don't need to think twice about titling anymore. Just go ahead and run it through the National Digital Title Clearinghouse and get your title.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kimberly, what's next for you at Hudson Auto Group then? As you think about, now you've got some extra time, right? You guys found a solution to a big problem that was impacting you at your Nissan stores and your Carvendi store operation. What are you guys working on next? What's the next thing for Hudson?
Well, I would love to see the digital titles through the clearinghouse actually become digital titles. We did work with Shane and the clearinghouse and get a couple digital titles. However, our vendors just weren't ready for that. We actually tried to sell some of them to a major rental car company, and they absolutely refused to even, I couldn't even get to anybody in the title department to say, this is what it is. This is where we're going. So I do hope we see it sooner than 10 years because we are.
I mean, 10 years, we'll all have gray hair by then. It stresses me out just thinking about it, like with all the different titling problems that are out there, Kimberly, right?
Well, Kimberly, I want it to happen as fast as possible too, because then we can join you on those trips to Mexico.
Yeah.
But I think what it is, and Sam, you asked a question earlier, what can dealers do?
Yeah.
Dealers can advocate to their state and say, why don't you have the building blocks? You need money? Well, okay, there's a free way to do this, and we'll pay for it. The banks will pay for it. The fleets will pay for it because we want this. It brings us so much operational efficiency. And so I think dealers have a very loud voice in states. The dealer principals in particular are normally very politically active and say, hey, this is what we're looking for. Get us the building blocks, get us electronic lien, electronic title, electronic registration, so that we can accept the digital title. And to Kimberly's point, digital titles are available, right? We've pushed them to a few places, and you need more states to be a little bit more open-minded and say, yeah, this is an actual thing now. This, like a boarding pass that, you used to be in paper, now there's digital. The first few times that someone rolled up to the gate with a digital boarding pass, there was always someone who was like, I don't know if this is going to scan correctly. Now you think if somebody was crazy if they even walked up with paper. It's the same thing in titling. We're going through that same maturation. And to be fair, and we can maybe catch this on editing if I didn't say it correctly, I thought by the end of the decade, not in a decade. So I think by the end of
before then. All right, thank goodness.
We'll get there.
Because it brings us to the last question. It is like, what is it about automotive? Like, we are incredibly tenacious. We find solutions to problems. Kimberly's a great example. Hudson Auto Group's a great example. But we are slow to adopt some things. So you think about those DMVs, you think about the political entities that operate titling and licensing and registration. That's one challenge. But even ourselves in automotive, like it would help improve the business if there were digital titles. But maybe it's because we have so many things we're trying to work on and do. You can only do one thing at once. But
my co-founder was a large mega dealer, and he used to say the problem is, and I think this is totally accurate, if you're a dealer principal, you're looking at your P&L and trying to figure out how to do better. There is no line item for titling. There's no point at which there's a singular entry that a dealer principal can look at and say, okay, here's the sum total of what slow titling cost me. It cost me depreciation, interest expense, mailing, shipping, handling, back and forth, lower customer service scores. What does that all add to? Well, there is no entry in accounting for that. But if you went to every individual department, a lot of times the departments, because you're the dealer principal, they're going to say, oh, it's fine, don't worry about it. Yeah. But if you dig into it just a little bit, like Hudson did and Carvendi did, you very quickly realize, wait a minute, we can fix this for a nominal statutory fee and we never have this problem again. And I think that's what's tough about it as a dealer principal, is that you don't have an easy place to go to chronicle what is poor titling costing you today until you think through it. And then you realize, oh my gosh, this is costing me a lot.
Yeah. Well, Shane, CEO Champ Titles, we appreciate you being here, sharing the solution with us. Kimberly, thanks for bringing us not only the challenges that you are facing in titling and processing, but also the solution in Champ Titles. And before we end, Shane and I, we've now found out that Hudson Auto Group is the place to be because, I mean, to celebrate controllers by the trips you've done, when you go to Mexico, if you're going to Cancun, there's typically little excursions. So you like swim with the dolphins, you swim with the manta rays, you do the shark tour. Have you signed up for anything yet? Is there one trip you're excited about?
Not yet. Not
Okay.
yet. I think we'll be doing that the next couple of weeks, I think.
Okay, one suggestion, because controllers are super valuable in the world. No shark tank diving.
No, I don't think there's any worry about me doing that.
Sharks scare the daylights out of me, and or alligators. Don't swim with the alligators. Stay safe. But Kimberly, we appreciate you being on. So thank you.
Thank you.
Kimberly,
Thanks for
Shane, thanks for
having me.
being on the Car Dealership Guy Industry Spotlight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.